What's going on, guys? It's been a hot minute. Welcome back to the review you've been looking for. This is our Star Wars in review. Guys, at the time of this recording, it has been almost 2 years since we dropped the last review, which was The Phantom Menace, which is crazy. Those were some of my earliest videos, guys. I was not editing them well. I was not using a great program. There were cuts, there were awkward music moments. Literally like some of my earliest videos I've ever made for the channel. So with that being said, guys, we have transitioned, of course, as you've known, to shorter content, easier to make, easier to record. It's just overall better product. So this is going to be similar to the other reviews, guys. It's going to be kind of my quick thoughts on the movie. It's going to be a favorite character, least favorite character, a score to 10, and a rankings. Looking back at my rankings for the other movies, I was very high on the original trilogy, which a lot of people are, and then not so high on The Phantom Menace, but because it's been so long, I really was happy I could sit down and watch this with a fresh eye on it. So if you haven't been here before, guys, welcome to Project Potter. My name is Kyle, your host. This is my review channel. I always say our, but it's most of the content is me, although check out the other group content that we have. Hoping to get some more of that in the future. But anyway, guys, like I said, Star Wars review, so we're going to jump right into it. Let's go. So Attack of the Clones, guys, this I feel like is an underrated movie. And I'm going to give you guys some of the things I like and some of the things I don't like, as I mentioned earlier. First of all, guys, did not know that Tamora Morrison, coming off of Book of Boba Fett, did not know that he played Jango Fett, who was his father, and did the voices. I guess they modeled it after his face, which is really cool because there's a whole bunch of Tamora in here. And he looks weird with hair, but I was like, it's okay. It's Jango Fett. I didn't know Tamora played Jango and then Boba. It makes sense because we find out that Jango is the one who creates the clone army or requests the clone army, or Master Sifo Din, something, I don't know. Don't hate me, Star Wars nerds. He is like a Jedi Master who was killed 10 years ago. They used his name to find out. Obi-Wan goes to Kamino. Really, really cool stuff, guys. Everything on Kamino is awesome. When Obi-Wan shows up, the setting, I think, is really cool. It's very foreboding. It's like, you don't really know what's going on there. Obi-Wan shows up and they're like, oh, we were expecting you. And he's like, you were expecting me? He's like, dude, I just found your planet that was erased from the archives. How are you possibly expecting me? You hid this place from existence, basically. And so he goes in there and they're like, oh, we're very happy with the clone army that we've got you. And he's like, the clone army? And he's like, oh, yes, that's why I'm here, of course. Obi-Wan kind of thinks on his feet there. There are some slow moments in this movie, guys. Obviously, there's the big romantic plot with Anakin and Padme, and this is Hayden Christensen's first role and the first time we see an older Anakin since we had young Annie in the first movie and with the pod racing and all that. And so we get Hayden Christensen here, and he gets, I think, a lot of hate for his performance. I actually think it's a pretty good performance. I think the writing isn't great for him, and I think some of the scenes aren't great, but in other scenes, the pacing, I think, isn't great. But I do think there are some really good scenes. There's the famous line, where he says, I hate sand, and it's like, okay, why did we put that in there? It doesn't even make sense. I guess it's like, are you saying you don't want to be on Tatooine because it's all desert? But it was just really weird that made in the final cut of the script. But the whole love sequence with him and Padme in the field, I actually kind of like it. It's playful. It's fun. They're rolling around. It feels a little fast for me. Like 2 scenes before, Padme is like, he's trying to hit on her. And he's like, you've grown more beautiful every day or whatever. He's like, I've been thinking about you. I've been dreaming about you. And she's like, please don't look at me like that. It makes me uncomfortable. And then the next scene, they're rolling around the field. And it's like, okay, she obviously fell fast for him. But also, I guess I get it because maybe they're, hanging out and they're spending time with each other. And she sees that he's trying to protect her. But I don't know. The bug scene, the poison bug scene in the beginning is really strange. Just some of the dialogue in there where they're like, Padme's in the bedroom, and then they have camera set up, and Anakin goes, oh, she turned the cameras off. She must not have liked me watching her. And I was like, well, yeah, dude. Obi-Wan is like, well, dude, we got to be careful. He's like, don't worry. He's like, I got R2-D2 programmed in there. He's like, anything that goes wrong, he's going to tell us right away. R2-D2 is taking a fucking nap in there. He's snoozing and cruising, and then these bugs come in, and then R2 wakes up, and he just does a basic scan across the room. He's like, that's nothing. He was like, I'm not going to scan anything. I'm just going to kind of look. It's like when you are half asleep and you wake up and you're like, huh? And then you're like, Obi-Wan and Anakin run in there and Anakin slices. This man goes and wielding his lightsaber, and like Padme could have easily, when she heard the noise and stuff, woken up and like, sat up in her bed. He comes in here and he just like freely like cuts these two poison worms, which Jango Fett ended up giving to this bounty hunter, which I thought was Fennec for a second, but then I remember that she dies and that's not Fennec, so that didn't make sense. But it was cool to see not only Jango Fett, who acted just like Boba here with the jetpack, and he's got different armor than Boba, but obviously being his father, it's really, really cool and super similar, and it was super badass in this. But there's just a lot, I think, to like in this movie. The whole thing with Shmi, when Anakin goes back and he's looking for his mom, and he goes and sees Watto, and Watto's got this like nasty beard, and he's like, Annie, this is Annie. And he's like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. He's like, I sold your mother for like $10. So it turns out that he actually sold them to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, which is awesome because we go to see where Luke went down and they're in the same little house in Tatooine, and it's really neat. And I was like, oh, this is nice, but they're obviously younger. It's really cool to go there and to see the younger versions. And then we see Shmi's husband, and he's like, oh yeah, she went out like a month ago and didn't come back. I think the Tuskens got her. And we're talking about the Tusken Raiders. And again, coming off of Boba Fett, I'm like, oh, because they're like, oh, the Tusken Raiders are savages and monsters. And I was like, not entirely, though. I was like, they are mostly. And in here they are. But it's interesting seeing like the newer Star Wars properties like Book of Boba Fett, where Boba spends a lot of time with the Tusken Raiders. And I'm sure they went back and watched these movies, and like that's kind of why they integrated them. But it's cool to see that, and then to see like the Tusken Raiders that we get in this movie, where they are kind of ruthless. Although Anakin goes there and they're kind of just hanging out, but then he finds Shmi, and she is just messed up, dude. It's a really sad scene, actually. He goes through the tent, and then she's got like lashings all over her back, like she's been tortured, obviously. And then in my head, I'm thinking, like, what did these people want with Shmi? Anakin frees Shmi, and then he like is crying, and she dies like right after. She does like a dramatic like throws her head back, and I was like, you can just die normal. It's okay. So Anakin loses his shit, and this is like the first time where you see Anakin start to fall to the dark side, where he loses his shit and he murders everyone. And it's like, okay, well, he had kind of a good reason, but then he goes back and he sees Padme, and she's like, it's okay to be angry, like it's a human emotion. And he's like, I don't think you understand. He's like, Padme, I wrecked their shit up. He's like, I killed the women, the children, the husbands. He's like, the milkman. He's like, I got them all, dude. And she's like, maybe any of this isn't working out. But that's like the first sign of the dark side that we see for Anakin there. And then obviously it's just like there's these little things, but he has a kind of a setback there, and he's angry and he's questioning Obi-Wan throughout the movie. Anakin is kind of like an angsty teenager, but given a lot of responsibility. Anakin's told from Chancellor Palpatine, like, you're the strongest Jedi I've ever seen. And it's like kind of boosting his ego. And obviously Chancellor Palpatine has some different plans in there, and we see him kind of manipulate all this stuff. But anyway, guys, I feel like I'm recapping the plot too much. And so I'm going to kind of pump the brakes there, but that's cool. We get the Clone War stuff. The Clone War stuff is really cool. But the Clone War fight at the end, I thought was a little rushed. And we obviously get the Dooku and Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin fight. And Dooku just kind of wrecks them. And I always thought this was kind of weird because Dooku doesn't really look like he's like a Master Jedi. He just kind of looks like an old man in a robe. But he like cuts off Anakin's arm, which is like a Skywalker tradition. Yoda, when he's fighting Dooku, is like just screaming. He's like, ah! And I'm like, okay. And Yoda flipping around is weird. Yoda in the original trilogy being super powerful and like fragile. I like that. But I always forget that like these are prequels. So like, yeah, I guess Yoda, when he was younger, would be flipping around and shit. So it looks dumb, kind of, but I like that he's so powerful that he matches Dooku kind of, shot for shot. And then Dooku pulls out the Force lightning that he's got. The Clone Wars face off against the droids at the end, but it's just a massive battle. It's like a CG battle fest, and I'm just like, it's not. The Clone Wars are cool, or the Clone Troopers are cool because of what it means. It's also really tragic knowing what happens with Order 66 when they're like, oh yeah, these clones are going to be really cool, and oh, look at this. And it's like, oh, it's strange because they use the clones in this movie, and so they kind of build a trust with them, but they also like don't really touch on the fact that like there was a secret like someone took this planet off of the archives to build this clone army. Like they didn't want you to know these clones were being built until everything was done. I think it's a fun movie. There's some things I did not like, obviously. The whole conveyor belt construction scene where they go into the factory is interesting. I do like C-3PO not only being in the film with R2-D2, which is great, but C-3PO losing his head, and then R2, like at the end of the battle, he like pops it off and then drags him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm beside myself." And he brings over the body. It's pretty good. Also, guys, there's that line from Obi-Wan in the beginning that I don't want to forget, where he says, he's talking to Anakin, he's like, "Why do I feel like you're going to be the death of me?" And I'm like, "Oh, dude." Nice little Easter egg there, because if you guys know in New Hope, obviously an old Obi-Wan dies at Darth Vader's hands and then becomes a Force ghost. And I thought that was a really neat little line. And so, yeah, that's pretty much Attack of the Clones. Okay, guys, the Force of Strong with this one is my favorite character. And for this one, guys, it has to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi, man, Ewan McGregor is just a treat, and I cannot wait. At the time of this recording, the Obi-Wan series is not out yet on Disney Plus, but that will be probably up and reviewed by the time that this posts. So I'm excited for that. I can't wait to see what that's there. And I think Hayden Christensen is also coming back as Darth Vader, and it'll be interesting to see him. Like, I think we're going to see him as Anakin a little bit longer, so I think that's going to actually pick up right after probably Revenge of the Sith. So that should be awesome. For this movie, Obi-Wan was awesome. I loved Ewan. I loved how he was like getting fresher with Anakin and trying to tell him, because Anakin like kept, going against his orders and trying to think he like knew everything. And he's like, "No, Anakin." He's like, "You have to listen to me." He's like, "Don't put your personal feelings in the way." There's so many times where he's like going after Padme, and he's like, "Dude, you got to stop, man." He's like, "You got to listen to like the order." And then this is the whole idea of like Jedi Order is like very strict, and you can't let your feelings get involved. And Anakin ends up like lying to Padme because he says like, "Oh, we're encouraged to love," and it's like, you're not though. He's like just trying to hit on Padme, and that's why Anakin is kind of like a teenager in this film. I don't know how old he is actually, or his character is in this film, but Obi-Wan is like the teacher figure, and I really like that he struggles with kind of being almost the dad, really, where he's like, "Anakin, you got to listen to what I'm saying, like my house, my rules." And he's really strong with the Force, and he figures out, he like relays this information back to Geonosis, but Obi-Wan's not quite the master. I mean, he is literally a Jedi master, but he's still working through some kinks, because like he gets captured on Geonosis, and he needs help from Anakin and Padme to come, and then obviously the rest of the Jedis come over, and he makes some clever things. There's a whole like when he goes after Jango, the whole asteroid thing is a throwback, obviously, to the original trilogy where they go to the asteroid field. The seismic bombs are awesome. I was like, I don't think we've explored this since this movie, and I was like, it's time to bring the seismic bombs back. Those were really cool, and the sound was awesome. And then how he hides on the back of the asteroids was really cool. But yeah, Obi-Wan was great. I think Ewan is great, and not just in Star Wars and all of his roles, but I think he was the best character in this one. Okay, guys, in a new segment we're doing, There Was No Try. This is my least favorite character for this movie, and this one has got to be Jango Fett. And I love Tamar Morrison, and let me say, it was a great surprise to see him in here. And I was like, oh, and again, I didn't like him with hair because I'm so used to him being bald as Boba, but I really was thrilled to see him back in the role. I just don't think his character lived up to the hype, because Jango looks awesome in this movie. I mean, man, that Mandalorian armor, dude, is so cool. And I love how it's different from obviously Boba or Mando's armor. This is like kind of like the original, literally the original bounty hunter before we even knew who Boba Fett was. So this is really cool because he acts a lot like Boba, and he's really badass. But I talked about how, guys, he's not like doing the like assassinations on his own. There is that awesome part though where he gives them there's a whole like bad CGI speeder chase with Anakin and Obi-Wan where they go through like the pulse connector or whatever, the same thing from the racing pods, and he's like, "I told you not to go around there," and Anakin jumps out the car. You guys know what I'm talking about. That CGI did not hold up at all. But there's a whole sequence where they're trying to chase down the bounty hunter that tried to take out Padme. And so they finally track down the bounty hunter, and they're like, "Who sent you?" And they're like, "Oh, it was a bounty hunter that sent me." And they're like, "By the name of," and then there's a dart that goes into her neck, and it's really cool, like effects. It like turns her into like a lizard or makes her old or something. It's really, really awesome. and it's Django that shoots that, and it's like, oh, it's really, really badass, and then he jetpacks away. But he wasn't great in this movie because he gets kind of this is the problem I have with like Boba too, is like the name is bigger than like the actual I should say the legend is bigger than the actual character. Where it's like Django is supposed to be the super good badass, a super cool badass, and then he's on Kamino fighting Obi-Wan in the rain, and he like loses his jetpack, or his jetpack blows up, and then he like is falling, and he's got the spikes that he puts into the side, and then he lets Obi-Wan go, but he like is kind of outdueled by Obi-Wan there, and like Boba actually has to save him as a kid, like going in there and starting the Slave One and stuff. We got to see the Slave One, and I was so excited because the Slave One is so freaking cool every time, guys. But Django just isn't great, and then he's at the he gets obviously beheaded by Mace Windu in the Clone War battle, and Mace has got the jump on him, and he was really, really cool looking, but I didn't love. Again, I love Tamora. I just didn't love this character. I would have liked him to be a little more badass. I thought we had glimpses of it, but I would have liked a little bit more, like, give me a really cool, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess as I'm saying this, like, we got that really cool dart into the neck, but it was just weird because it's like, why isn't Django just trying to kill Padme? Why is he giving the job? Why is he giving these weird slugs to another assassin? It's like an assassin giving another assassin a job. It doesn't make sense, but anyway, guys, I love Tamora, and Django looks really cool, but he's got to get my least favorite character for this one. Okay, guys, that brings us to a score. This is an 8.3. This is a solid movie, and I think an underrated movie. People hate on this movie, and I'm like, look, yeah, it's got some slow parts, but it's not bogged down in like the Senate negotiations, like Phantom Menace is. And obviously, we don't get something like Darth Maul, but we get Django in this one. Obviously, we get Boba. We get Obi-Wan and Anakin. We do build the romance between Anakin and Padme. We get Anakin starting to turn to the dark side by going back and seeing his mother killed, or his mother's dying breath, basically, and he kills the Tuskens, and that's when he first starts to turn. We do get the younglings in this one, guys, and I got a little sad because I was like, oh no. And I thought Ahsoka was in this movie as well, but it's not. It's actually a same species girl named Ashla. But she had a lightsaber at the end, and I was like, whoa, was Ahsoka in here? But timeline wise, that wouldn't make sense, obviously. But that was really cool to see the representation there. But yeah, this is a fun movie. I really think the visuals are cool. I always think of the Kamino scene where Obi-Wan goes there, because that's when you have like a mystery at hand, and you're like, what do you mean there's a Jedi that's been killed for a decade and you're building clones? But yeah, this is just a fun movie, guys. It's a good time, and yeah, not every scene is great. Like I said, the factory scene when they go in there, I thought was ridiculous, and I guess the effects are kind of cool. But like the fact that Anakin like gets his hand stuck and he's about to be like melted or whatever, and R2-D2 saves the day is cool. We get to see C-3PO in like black armor, and he's like, oh, it's the Maker. And I was like, oh, C-3PO is great. I don't understand people who don't like him, but that was all really cool. And he gets his gold armor at the end. It kind of ends like Empire Strikes, or I guess a New Hope. No, sorry, it does end like Empire Strikes Back, where they're all kind of looking out at the end, but it kind of, and it has a Empire Strikes Back feeling where it's like, oh no, like this isn't a victory, the Clone Wars have begun. And so there's kind of like this like, oh, like shit's about to go down feeling. But yeah, I think this is a fun movie. Not perfect by any means, but certainly not the worst Star Wars movie. And I think it's just a good time. Okay, guys, that brings us to our rankings here. So if you guys remember, you probably don't remember because it's been 2 years since I've put these up here. I will give you guys a little refresher here. So at number 1 here, I had Return of the Jedi. I think that's pretty much a perfect movie. It's a 9.8 for me. Number 2 is A New Hope, a 9.6. Very, very good movie. Number 3, Empire Strikes Back, a 9.2. So I did score those a little high, but I think those are appropriate scores considering how good the original trilogy is. This one's going to slot in number 4, guys, and at an 8.3, just above Phantom Menace at a 7.1. I like it a lot more than Phantom Menace, even though it doesn't have Duel of Fates and doesn't have Darth Maul, but I just think so much of Phantom Menace, despite its like really good cast, is just such a slog. And I feel like even though this one starts, actually this movie doesn't even start slow, guys. The opening scene, Padme gets off and there's a bombing, and it's really cool because we actually see the Naboo fighters, and I was like, oh, is Mando in this thing? And it's like, You guys will get that joke, hopefully. But no, it's really awesome because there's a bombing right away, and like I think it might be Keira Knightley, I forget, but like Padme comes back in the Senate to like discuss something or whatever, and she's like, "Oh my god, I shouldn't have come back." But there is one cheesy line where the guy is like, "I guess there was no danger," and then literally the thing blows up, and I was like, "All right, that's a little too on the nose for me." But yeah, guys, I think this one, like I said, I don't want to repeat everything I just said, but I think it's a good time, and I think it's an underrated movie. I think people who are hating on this movie need to realize that this sets up a lot of stuff, and it's also some cool flashbacks to like we get basically Boba's creation, and we get the clones, and we get kind of Anakin's path towards the dark side. And obviously it gets worse in Revenge of the Sith, or it's amplified there, but this is like the first inkling of like we see Anakin right away like challenging Obi-Wan and challenging the council, and it's like he's not just like yes master, and he's doing everything, and he's listening to Obi-Wan, but he is like very defiant, and it's like, and he's very caught up in his feelings, and you can tell that like that's all going to lead into him becoming Vader. So we'll get more into that, guys, but that's where our rankings stand so far. Okay, guys, that's another episode of the review you've been looking for. Welcome back, guys. I know this one's probably a little bit long in the tooth, but I'm going to try and keep these ones shorter. They're going to be much shorter than the original reviews from a couple of years ago now, which is, again, weird to say out loud, but these will be dropping weekly, guys. So thanks for checking out the channel. Go like, comment, subscribe if you guys did like the content, and we will be back for Revenge of the Sith, wrapping up the prequel trilogy, guys, and then we're just gonna keep on going, and we got a lot of good stuff to go. So appreciate you guys stopping by, and until next time, guys, I hate sand.